Raul Montero has always been an impulsive man. He has always sought success since childhood and was willing to do anything to that goal. It seemed that he would marry Emerald, the heir to a financial empire, to increase his status. However, over time, his goals led him to a dark path of betrayal and falsehood. That path reached the highest point of his deafness the day that Emerald was born. In the hospital, Esmeralda, a woman of pure heart, was in labor, surrounded by nurses and doctors. As she prepared to give birth to the twins, fruit of her relationship with Raul, her face was covered with pain and anxiety. But the man she loved was far away, trapped in a moral dilemma that she herself had created. Raul was planning a definitive escape with his longtime lover, Kelly. Raul walked from one side to the other in his studio, the hot phone in his hands, in the luxurious mansion of Montero. He had just contacted Kelly, who was eagerly waiting for him at the airport. "Dear Raul, who are you talking to?" asked Esmeralda, her tired but hopeful voice, as she entered the room. As always, Raul lied, saying it was just business, while kissing his forehead quickly to hide his guilt. Kelly, a beautiful woman with feline eyes, was waiting impatiently at the airport in the meantime. She looked at the clock repeatedly, every second as an eternity. She was thinking, "Tomorrow will start our new life." She did not know that her fate was about to intersect in tragic and unexpected ways. Emerald was taken to the surgery room when her labor worsened. His state of mind, which was a mixture of hope and fear, was reflected in the cold white lights of the hospital. In an effort to stabilize the situation and save the twins, nurses and doctors ran from side to side. A nurse shouted, "He's losing a lot of blood," while Emerald, half-conscious, was looking for Raul, but he wasn't. He had left behind the weight of his indecision and guilt. As he prepared to board the airport, Raul was excited. Again, the phone vibrated. "What are you doing?" Kelly's message said, "Flight leaves in 3 hours." He was aware that there was no longer time to postpone the decision. He kept his suitcase and the plane ticket in his pocket with his hands trembling. Kelly smiled triumphantly beside him, as the sound of the airplane engine stifled his voice. She whispered, "At last we're alone, my love." At the same time, the hospital was filled with bipeds and altered voices. In the intensive care unit bed, Emerald was unconscious. The doctors worked hard, with their foreheads sweating. Don Alfonso, Esmeralda's father, stood on his forehead when he heard the news. He nodded on the phone, saying, "I'm going there right now." He was determined to find Raul and take responsibility for his departure. Raul, with his hands trembling and his pale face, made a decision that would change everything. He apologized to Esmeralda and quickly left the hospital, leaving her in the hands of the doctors. The doctors fought to save 2 lives in the surgery room. The surgeon warned that he was getting in shock. "We're going to need more blood." Don Alfonso entered the hospital like a hurricane, demanding to know where his daughter was. His fury and determination were visible in his eyes. Raul had a shadow of doubt on his face while he and Kelly were drinking champagne on the plane. He knew that he had left a devastating trail behind, and that his new life with Kelly was beginning with a betrayal that could never be resolved. Outside the betrayal she had just suffered, Esmeralda was fighting for her life in the hospital. The cardiac monitor emitted irregular beeps, indicating that the next few days would be full of unforeseen events. Don Alfonso Velázquez has always had strong beliefs. He built an empire with secrets and alliances as head of an influential family and powerful business magnate. His world collapsed when he discovered that his daughter Esmeralda had abandoned him at a difficult time in his life. Don Alfonso did not accept defeat easily. He protected his family immediately. Don Alfonso, in the dark office in the city center, shrugged his forehead when he heard about Raul. "Watch him carefully. I don't trust that man," he said to one of his trusted men, who immediately left to accompany Raul. Alfonso was aware that a significant event was taking place that jeopardized the safety of Esmeralda and the twins. Emerald remained in critical condition at the hospital. The only thing that filled the room were the machines and the medical monitors, echoing the fragile state of his health. Don Alfonso arrived, squeezed from the outside, and was quickly taken to the waiting room. His voice cried through the hallways and asked, "Where is my daughter?" His fierce gaze made anybody retreat. Raul was at the airport at the same time, ready to board with Kelly. Between the feeling of guilt for leaving Emerald and the desire to escape, his mind was in a state of confusion. He was getting farther and farther away from his family with every step he took, but he had to continue. His decision followed him like a ghost. Determined not to let Raul escape impunity, Don Alfonso used all his connections to locate him. He discovered, with the help of his men, Raul and Kelly's escape plans. Alfonso knew it was imperative that he didn't waste time. He summoned his security team and left for the airport, determined to face Raul before it was too late. As he remained unconscious, Emerald's state began to stabilize gradually. Although the doctors remained concerned, there was a small sign of hope. Anger burned in Don Alfonso's chest, and he could not divert his attention from the idea of punishing Raul. Although he was aware that time was passing, his determination to save his daughter was even stronger. Raul felt more and more nervous at the airport. He tried to avoid the feeling that something was very wrong. Kelly was by her side and didn't worry about the riot that was approaching them. Raul received a call from an unknown number while they were waiting for the flight. "I'm Don Alfonso, Raul. Do you believe you can escape me? You're completely wrong. I'll find him and demand that he pay for everything." Raul got cold. His being was dominated by fear and guilt. Don Alfonso was not a man who made unfounded promises. Every second seemed like an eternity, and the peace he hoped to have with Kelly was disappearing. Soon, the dream of a new life turned into a nightmare. Don Alfonso and his crew went to the airport and searched for Raul everywhere. Alfonso looked with determination, and his men knew that failure was not an option. The tireless search continued, and every moment was vital. After everything he had done, Alfonso knew that Raul could not escape. Raul felt increased pressure inside the airport. He knew that he was surrounded, and that the only way to escape was before Alfonso found him. Kelly felt the tension rise. She asked, "Raul, what's going on?" He had no answers. The panic led them to try a desperate last resort. His men informed Don Alfonso, who was now closer to Raul. "We found him. It's at the landing point." Alfonso was quick. He ran quickly there, determined to confront Raul and end this betrayal once and for all. Raul made a final decision. Stuck. He knew that confronting Don Alfonso was an inevitable task, and that he could not escape from his past. The tension between them was evident when Alfonso finally found him. "Raul, you destroyed my family," Alfonso said, his voice loaded with a controlled fury that now was the time to pay for it. The hospital where Esmeralda was admitted was a scene of chaos and tension as Raul Montero dealt with his moral crisis and the unceasing persecution of Don Alfonso. When she was pregnant, Esmeralda was fighting for her and her children's lives. The efforts of doctors and nurses to stabilize her and save the babies were frenzied. At the hospital, the climate was tense and uncertain. The situation in the surgery room was critical. The doctors were fighting against time while the pale and fragile Emerald was half conscious. One nurse yelled, "He's losing a lot of blood," while another was trying to control the bleeding. The chief surgeon expressed concern and immediately requested more blood. The medical team knew they were running against time because every second counted. Don Alfonso was eager to know what his daughter was doing outside the surgery room. His face was marked by pain and concern. He couldn't stand the idea of losing the twins and Emerald. Although his phone constantly called with information about Raul's search, his priority at that time was his daughter's life. Even in his critical condition, Esmeralda missed Raul. She sought his hand as she slept, waiting for a sign of support from him. Raul wasn't present. He was far away, involved in his own problem. Esmeralda, who always believed in Raul's love and dedication, missed him very much. Raul's mistress, Kelly, waited impatiently at the airport. She did not know how serious the state of the hospital was and thought that they would start a new life together soon. Esmeralda's sad reality contrasted strongly with her optimism. Every minute that passed, Kelly was getting more nervous. She didn't know that her escape with Raul was near the end. The hospital's medical team did everything to stabilize Esmeralda. They managed to control the bleeding and stabilize their condition after hours of hard work. The twins, on the other hand, were still in a critical situation. The cardiac monitor emitted irregular beeps, indicating that the next few days would be agitated. Emerald was transported to an intensive care unit, ITU, where he would remain under continuous supervision. Hearing that his daughter was stable but in critical condition, Don Alfonso felt a mixture of relief and concern. He was aware that the fight had not ended. The twins were still in danger, and Raúl was absent. Alfonso made the decision to focus on protecting his daughter and grandchildren at all costs. Raúl couldn't avoid his guilt now that he was on the plane with Kelly. Every glass of champagne he held looked bitter and was a reminder of his betrayal. Kelly smiles victoriously, away from Raúl's inner turmoil. She whispered, "At last we're alone, my love." However, for Raúl, the escape was becoming a nightmare. Emerald continued fighting in the hospital. The doctors noticed that his body responded to treatments, even if he didn't know it. She was incredibly strong, and everyone expected her and the twins to overcome this difficult phase. Don Alfonso, alongside Mary, who heard of Raúl's treachery, knew that they needed to work together to overcome the difficulties. Everyone was going through an unstable emotional situation, which reflected the hospital situation. The abandonment of Raúl was an attack on the strength and dignity of the Velázquez family, as well as a betrayal of Esmeralda. Don Alfonso, Maria, and the medical team were determined to save Emerald and the twins to the end. Despite being distant, Raúl began to feel the strength of his actions. His mind was corroded by feelings of doubt and guilt. He knew that it was not possible to escape his obligations forever. He would have to deal with the consequences of his choices because the reality was cruel. Every mile the plane traveled, Raúl felt farther away from his family and closer to the moral abyss he had created. Raúl Montero's escape with Kelly seemed to be about to come true. However, he began to feel the weight of guilt and the consequences of his choices. Raúl was trapped in dark thoughts while Kelly imagined a bright future. His decision to leave Emerald in the hospital tormented him mentally, and he felt more and more the gravity of his betrayal. Kelly was far from Raúl's inner turmoil and was eager for their new beginning. Trying to reassure Raúl, she said, "Let's live on the beach, have a quiet life away from all this." However, he could not understand what he was saying. His mind always remembered Emerald struggling for life in the hospital and his unborn twins. The constant noise of the plane's engines could not stifle Raúl's voice of conscience. He knew he couldn't escape his actions. Kelly tried to recover Raúl from distraction. "Are you all right, Raúl, honey?" she asked, but he just shrugged his head and couldn't answer. Esmeralda was in critical but stable condition while in hospital. The medical team did everything they could to save her and the twins. Don Alfonso was next to her, the face with an expression of anger and concern. He was aware that Raúl should be found and held accountable. Increasingly guilty, Raúl began to rethink his decision. He knew he had made a big mistake leaving Emerald. His mind focused on Don Alfonso, furious and determined to protect his daughter. Raúl was aware that Alfonso would not rest until the punishment was applied. He began to understand that running away would not solve his problems. It would simply slow them down. Kelly noticed Raúl's concern and tried to distract him. She said, "Let's start a new life together, away from all this drama." But Raúl knew it was too late for a new beginning with no effects. He could no longer ignore what he had done when reality reached him. He thought of Emerald and the twins, for how much he had betrayed them and left them vulnerable. The tension between Raúl and Kelly has intensified. He couldn't hide his inner anguish, and Kelly was beginning to realize that something was going wrong. "Raúl, are you hiding something from me?" she asked. But he wasn't willing to admit the truth. They remained silent, and the emotional distance between them increased. Raúl made an important decision as the plane approached its destination. He was aware that he needed to go back to the past and deal with the consequences of his choices. Running would not solve anything. It would only prolong your pain and guilt. He made the decision to return to Emerald, ask for forgiveness, and try to improve. Raúl told Kelly his decision when he fell. "I need to go home." His voice was filled with determination when he said, "I can't keep running." Kelly got angry and shocked. "You can't leave me anymore now." She yelled, "Not after everything we've been through." But Raúl was determined. "Kelly, I need to correct my mistakes. I'm obliged to do that on behalf of my family." Kelly was desperate and tried to persuade Raul to stay, but he had already decided. He was willing to face the challenges, although he knew that the way back would be difficult and full of obstacles. He left Kelly at the airport and took a cab to get to the hospital. When Raul returned, the hospital remained in a state of extreme tension. Don Alfonso was determined to protect his daughter at any cost, while Esmeralda was fighting for life. Raul was prepared to face Alfonso's anger and Esmeralda's suffering, although he knew he would have to face both situations. He was aware that this was the only way to salvation. Maria, Esmeralda's best friend, was on a mission at the hospital, while Raul Montero dealt with his moral crisis and made the decision to return. Hearing of Raul's betrayals, Mary felt compelled to act. Mary knew that she needed to be strong and protect her friend from more suffering, as Emerald's health was still critical. At UTI, Emerald was fighting for life. Every minute was vital because the twins were still in danger. Mary, who had always helped Emerald, was determined not to allow Raul's betrayal to destroy her friend. She began to examine Esmeralda's belongings in search of information that would help her better understand what was happening. Mary found a cell phone hidden among the papers while checking Esmeralda's belongings. Her curiosity prompted her to review the messages and photos. What she discovered was catastrophic. Photos of Raul and Kelly, love messages exchanged between them, and detailed plans to escape were all present. Seeing the evidence of Raul's betrayal, Mary became angry and sad. Although Mary was aware of the need to communicate this information to Don Alfonso, she also knew that this could cause emotional damage to the Emerald. However, she felt that the truth needed to be revealed so that Emerald could see things in front of her. Don Alfonso was eagerly waiting for news when Mary went to the waiting room. Mary handed over the phone with the evidence of Raul's betrayal to Don Alfonso, saying, "Don Alfonso, I found something you need to see." By looking at the photos and messages, Alfonso felt his anger increase. He shut his fists and claimed that he knew he wasn't trustworthy. But watching that is unacceptable. He was aware that in order to save his daughter and grandchildren, he should act immediately. On the other hand, Raul was on his way to the hospital, tormented by guilt. He knew he needed to deal with the effects of his actions, but he didn't know what he expected. On the other hand, Kelly felt abandoned and betrayed when she was at the airport alone. Before he even started, his new relationship with Raul had ended. Don Alfonso and Maria began to plan how to deal with the situation at the hospital. Alfonso made the decision to protect Esmeralda and the twins at any cost. He knew that the confrontation would be inevitable and that he needed to be prepared for Raul's arrival. Still unconscious, Esmeralda was fighting with all her strength. Doctors noticed a modest improvement in his condition, but knew that recovery would be lengthy and difficult. Mary's presence by her side offered a quiet comfort and a guarantee that she was not alone in this battle. Don Alfonso soon confronted Raul when he finally arrived at the hospital. "Do you dare show up here after what you did?" Alfonso yelled angrily. Raul knew there were not enough excuses to justify his betrayal, but he was determined to try. "Don Alfonso, I'm aware of my mistake," Raul said in a remorseful voice. "I know what I've done is unforgivable, but I'm here to try to fix things." Alfonso, still furious, allowed Raul to make an explanation, but made it clear that he would not forgive him. Mary was attentive and ready to help Emerald in any situation. At the same time as Raul tried to justify what he had done, Esmeralda began to show signs of conscience. Her eyes slowly opened, and she began to remember what had happened recently. Although she was surprised by Raul's presence by her side, the pain of betrayal quickly took over her. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her weak but painful voice. Raul was with tears in his eyes as he tried to explain, but he knew his words would never be enough. At a moment of clarity, Esmeralda decided that she would no longer cry for Raul. Her voice gained strength when she said, "My children need me strong." She was aware that, regardless of betrayal, she should continue. "Mary is committed to helping Emerald at all stages. Emerald, we're working together right now." Mary held her friend's hand and stated that she was not alone. Seeing Esmeralda's determination, Don Alfonso became proud. His daughter was sturdy and strong, he knew. Raúl knew it would be difficult to recover Esmeralda, but he was willing to fight for her. He knew he needed to show that he was sorry and that he would do anything to win her confidence again. Raúl was ready to face all the challenges of the long journey. Kelly was in the Caribbean, trying to find comfort in the promise of a new life, while Raúl was in hospital with Don Alfonso's fury and the pain of Emerald. The tropical paradise, on the other hand, could not forget the harsh and relentless reality that accompanied them. The news that Kelly was pregnant was an explosion, completely changing the course of her relationship with Raúl. Kelly, initially excited, began to realize that Raúl was distant. He spent hours thinking, often seeming absent. The burden of guilt and remorse began to overthrow the dream of a quiet life on the beach. Although Kelly had tried everything to help him feel better, the shadow of betrayal and responsibility persisted. Raúl was tormented by his mistakes, now that he had the opportunity to be a father again. In the hospital, the image of Emerald struggling for life did not leave him rested. He knew he couldn't start a new life without having to face the effects of his choices. Every day in the Caribbean was a constant reminder of his escape and his inability to deal with the real world. Emerald was still recovering in the hospital. Mary and Don Alfonso were always by his side, which comforted him. The doctors observed a gradual improvement in his condition, but knew that recovery would be difficult. Everyone around Emerald was dedicated to helping her, and her determination was evident. Raúl's situation was further complicated by the news that Kelly was pregnant. Although he was aware that he needed to come back and take responsibility, he also felt a duty to Kelly and the baby. The two became more and more tense, and each conversation became a battle of conflicting emotions. Kelly approached Raúl on the balcony of the beach house while he was staring at the sky. "We need to talk, Raúl," she said with her restless voice. Realizing that the conversation would be inevitable, he turned to her. Kelly cried when she revealed she was pregnant. He was surprised at the news and didn't know how to react. Raúl felt more lost than ever. Kelly tried to comfort him after understanding the gravity of the situation. "We can that together. We can start a new life here, away from everything," she suggested, but Raúl knew it would not be easy. He was divided between his duties with Emerald and the twins and those of Kelly and the baby. Raúl and Kelly were trying to figure out how to deal with their complicated emotions, while Esmeralda continued to strengthen herself. She was determined to continue, regardless of Raúl's betrayal. The health of the twins and their own recovery were their first goals. Don Alfonso and Mary were by her side, giving her the strength and support she needed. Raúl was aware that he needed to make a choice. Running was no longer possible. He had to confront the real world and deal with the consequences of his choices. He chose to go back to Emerald and try to improve. Kelly said goodbye in pain, but she knew it was the right way. "I need to move, Kelly," Raúl said with determination. "I have to face all this and try to do the right things." Although hurt, Kelly understood. "Raúl, I understand. Take care of yourself and the twins." "We will meet again someday," she said with tears in her eyes. Raúl hugged Kelly for the last time before leaving, determined to face what awaited him. Esmeralda continued to recover as Raúl returned to the hospital. Every day his strength was increased by the presence of his friends and family. She knew that Don Alfonso and Mary would always support her. She was determined and ready to face any obstacle. Kelly began to adapt to her new reality in the Caribbean. Pregnancy made her think about her choices and the strength she would need to have to raise the baby on her own. Although she knew that the journey would be difficult, she was determined to continue. After that, she saw the tropical paradise as a place to reflect and rebirth. The hospital remained a tense environment while Raúl returned. Stronger and stronger, Esmeralda was ready to confront Raúl and hear his opinion. Don Alfonso, still furious, was determined to protect his daughter with all the strength possible. Mary was always with Emerald and ready to help her in any decision she made. All the changes that were to come began with the reversal in the Caribbean. Raúl knew that he would face Don Alfonso's anger and Esmeralda's suffering when he returned, but was determined to seek redemption. He knew that the path would be difficult and full of difficulties, but he was prepared to deal with each of them. The medical revelation that would dramatically alter the course of events arose amidst the emotional chaos and personal struggles each character faced. A revolutionary scientific discovery involved Esmeralda and her twins, who were fighting for life in the hospital. The twins had a valuable and rare mutation revealed by genetic testing. Attention from scientists and a secret organization dedicated to sophisticated genetic studies has been drawn by this unusual and potentially transformative mutation. Esmeralda and her children did not know that they had become part of a much larger game than they could have foreseen. When they discovered the mutation, the doctors at the hospital were perplexed. They knew that this discovery could have significant consequences for medicine in general, and not just for the Velázquez family. The mutation would pave the way for advances in the cure of genetic diseases and even the development of new treatments. The first person to be informed of the discovery was Don Alfonso. He immediately perceived the effects of the news and felt the need to protect his family from any external danger. He was aware of the fact that the information should be kept secret until they could come to a decision on the best way to approach it. He was then informed that Mary was always beside Emerald. The discovery of the existence of genetic mutations raised the state of emergency of the situation. Mary knew that this could attract unwanted and dangerous attention. She pledged to defend Emerald and the twins until the end. At the same time, Esmeralda, who was still recovering, began to show signs of improvement. Her strength and determination to improve were evident. Although concerned, the doctors were hopeful of signs of progress. They knew that her and the twins' health depended on every day. Until Raúl arrived at the hospital, he was still unaware of the medical discovery. He focused on asking forgiveness and trying to correct his mistakes. But the new revelation would add more complications to the already tense situation. Raúl would have to face not only his own fault, but also the responsibility to take care of his children. The hospital's medical team began to act to protect the twins. They were aware that information related to genetic mutation needed to be treated with extreme caution. Any leakage can cause many problems and put the life of Emerald and her babies at risk. Don Alfonso began to mobilize his resources to protect his family while Esmeralda was recovering. He was aware that to deal with the consequences of the genetic discovery, a solid plan was needed. Alfonso began bringing together a team of experts using his extensive network of contacts to help navigate this new and complicated reality. Mary was always attentive to Esmeralda's needs and ensured that she was aware of the situation as soon as she was able to understand. In receiving the information, Esmeralda demonstrated his strength and endurance. She was aware that her children were now even more special and needed to do everything to protect them. Knowledge of the medical discovery began to spread among a small group of trusted experts. It was clear to everyone that the situation was delicate and that the utmost discretion was needed. The hospital, which was already in a tense environment, turned into a battlefield of secrets and precautions. Don Alfonso confronted Raúl as soon as he arrived at the hospital. Alfonso, in a serious voice, said, "You don't know what's at stake here." Not yet fully aware of the situation, Raúl realized that something deeper and more urgent was happening. Raúl was shocked when Don Alfonso and Maria spoke to him about the genetic mutation of the twins. Raúl tried to understand the gravity of the situation, saying, "I knew I had to go back and face everything, but this is much bigger than I imagined." He was aware that he should protect his children, regardless of their previous mistakes. Emerald, now conscious and successful, began to participate in the conversations on how to proceed. His perseverance and strength were inspiring. "We need to take all precautions to protect our children," she said in a strong voice. "And that means working together, regardless of what the past has done." A new sense of purpose and union was created in the Velázquez family after the medical revelation. Everybody knew they would face terrible obstacles, but they were determined to save Emerald and the twins. They started drawing up a plan to ensure the safety and future of the babies with the help of Don Alfonso, Maria, Raúl, and the medical team. The discovery that two twins had a genetic mutation saved their lives and strengthened family ties. Now that she was fully aware of her responsibility, Esmeralda was ready to overcome any obstacle. The medical revelation had a significant impact, turning a critical situation into a chance for revitalization and power. Don Alfonso Velázquez was a man of vision and determination from the beginning. He quickly understood the importance of genetic discovery on his grandchildren. This was not just a matter of family health. It had far greater consequences that could attract the attention of threatening powers. Don Alfonso began to elaborate a meticulous plan to safeguard his family. The first thing Don Alfonso did was make sure that the information remained private. He was aware that any leak could cause a storm of trouble. He hired a highly trained private security team to protect the hospital and monitor any suspicious activities, using his extensive network of contacts and resources. To avoid alarm for Esmeralda and the doctors, security was strengthened discreetly. Don Alfonso convened a secret meeting with his trusted team while Esmeralda was recovering. His firm and authoritarian voice started by saying, "We need to make sure that this information doesn't end up in the wrong hands, and that involves taking drastic measures if necessary." Adjusted to his leadership, his men agreed. They were aware that the patriarch was willing to do anything to save his family. Don Alfonso also began to communicate with genetic experts he considered reliable, because he knew that they could provide advice and support without risking information security. He had to understand all the consequences of genetic mutation and how he could use it to protect and even benefit the family without putting them in unwanted danger. Mary entered into Don Alfonso's plan because she was always beside Esmeralda. Alfonso told Mary that Esmeralda trusted you. "We need you to be our direct link with her, ensuring that she feels safe and knows what's going on." Mary immediately accepted, feeling the responsibility. She was aware that her friendship and loyalty to Emerald would be vital in the future. Raul, now aware of the gravity of the situation, was incorporated into the plan. Although still angry with him, Don Alfonso knew that Raul had a role to play. Alfonso looked directly at Raul and said, "You caused this situation, but now it's time to do something right." Raul was repentant and promised to do everything he could to help and save his children. As she recovered, Esmeralda was slowly informed of her father's plan. His determination and strength were evident. "I will do everything necessary to protect my children," she said with a strong voice. Don Alfonso knew that he could count on his daughter to cope with any obstacle. Don Alfonso's security team began to keep an eye on all the doors and doors of the hospital. To ensure that no suspect approached the twins, all people entering were carefully checked. Security cameras were placed discreetly, and security personnel worked in shifts to ensure constant surveillance. Don Alfonso began preparing an action plan in case the situation worsened. He was aware that it was imperative to be prepared for any possible situation. This included the possibility of evacuating Esmeralda and the twins to a safe location if the safety of the hospital was threatened. He chose a hiding place with all the amenities necessary to shelter and protect his family. Don Alfonso contacted geneticists who started working with the doctors at the hospital. They looked at the results of the genetic tests and started designing ways to use the mutation beneficially, keeping the information private. The meetings were held in discreet and secure locations to prevent any information being disclosed. Don Alfonso also began to prepare to deal with the media and other interested people. He was aware of the fact that the news could leak at some point, so he needed to be prepared to take over the narrative. He told his team, "We need to be ahead of it. We can better protect Emerald and the twins if we control the information." While everybody was working, Esmeralda continued to recover. His resilience and strength impressed everyone around him. Although she was aware that the battle was still far from over, she was determined to face every obstacle directly. She felt more prepared to protect her children and face the uncertain future with the support of Don Alfonso, Maria, and even Raul. Don Alfonso's plan was difficult and complicated, but it was necessary to save the family. He knew that the next steps would be difficult, but was determined to do everything he could to save Emerald and the twins. Their lives were changed by the discovery of their genes, but they also learned about family strength and unity. Raul Montero knew that his journey back to the hospital would be a difficult and challenging journey due to his treason and the devastating consequences of his actions. He was determined to seek redemption, no matter what he faced. He was confronted with the truth of his choices as soon as he arrived at the hospital. Don Alfonso was waiting for him at the entrance to the building. "Do you dare to appear here after everything you've done?" Alfonso yelled angrily. Raul had a heavy heart, but was determined to try, even though he knew that his actions could not be explained with words. "Don Alfonso, I'm aware of my mistake." He spoke with a voice filled with regret, saying, "I know what I've done is unforgivable, but I'm here to try to fix things." Raúl managed to speak to Don Alfonso, still furious, but made it clear that he would not have mercy. Mary watched attentively beside Emerald, ready to help her friend in whatever decision she made. Everyone felt that the conflict was inevitable, and there was tension in the air. At the same time as Raúl tried to justify what he had done, Esmeralda began to show signs of conscience. Her eyes slowly opened, and she began to remember what had happened recently. Although she was surprised by Raúl's presence by her side, the pain of betrayal quickly took over her. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her weak but painful voice. Raúl tried to explain with tears in his eyes. "Esmeralda, I was lost. I was consumed by guilt and desire. I made the wrong choices, but I'm here to try to fix that. Although I acknowledge that I cannot correct what I have done, I am willing to do anything to obtain your forgiveness." Although still hurt, Esmeralda realized that he was real. Mary intervened in the conflict. "Your words are meaningful, Raúl, but your actions will be even more. You need Emerald now, not only as the father of the twins, but also as someone willing to fight for her and her family." "Are you ready for that?" Raúl agreed, determined to prove that he was able to change. Don Alfonso remained skeptical as he watched the scene. "Raúl, if you really want to redeem yourself, you'll need to prove that. You will have to face many difficulties, and it will not be easy. I'll give you a chance to show your worth if you're really willing to fight." Raúl recognized the importance of Alfonso's offer and pledged to do everything necessary to fulfill it. As she became more conscious, Esmeralda began to engage in conversations about the future. His determination and strength were evident. "I won't let this betrayal determine my life. My children need me, and I'll be there to help them." Her voice gained strength when she said, "Raúl, if you really want to be part of it, you need to show that you are committed." Raúl knew that the road to redemption would be difficult and lengthy. He began to actively engage in protection plans and discussions about the genetic discovery of twins. He demonstrated a new degree of dedication by working alongside Don Alfonso and Maria. Kelly continued in the Caribbean and began dealing with his new life alone. Pregnancy made her think about how strong she needs to be for her baby, and in her choices. Although she was hurt by Raúl's departure, she understood the importance of the situation and wished him and his family the best. Now that he was fully involved in Don Alfonso's security plan, Raúl began to gain the trust of the doctors and the security team. He attended meetings, helped establish security protocols, and worked hard to ensure that Emerald and the twins were safe. His dedication began to be perceived by others. When he saw Raúl's effort, Esmeralda began to think of the possibility of redemption. "Raúl, you're demonstrating that you have the ability to change. However, remember that restoring confidence takes time," she said in a cautious and hopeful voice. "Keep showing your commitment, and maybe we can find a way together." Although still vigilant, Don Alfonso began to notice Raúl's change. "Raúl, you're moving forward." Alfonso, with his firm voice but with a touch of acceptance, said, "Continue like this, and there will be a chance for you to redeem yourself completely." Raúl's journey to redemption was filled with difficulties, but he was determined to overcome them. He began to rebuild his life and regain the trust of his family with the support of Esmeralda, Maria, and even Don Alfonso. Everyone knew that the genetic research of the twins was not completed. Now, with a new perspective, Raúl was prepared to face any obstacle. He was determined to continue, even though he knew that redemption was a difficult path. His determination and dedication demonstrated that he was willing to do whatever was necessary to save his family and build a better future. An unlikely alliance began to form among all those involved amidst the emotional storm and medical revelations. The critical situation and the need to safeguard Emerald and the twins united people who were once separated by fights and betrayals. A new hope and strength to face the challenges ahead came with this new alliance. Don Alfonso assumed the responsibility of protecting the family with his ability and abilities. To ensure everyone's safety, he needed faithful allies. Mary, always faithful and dedicated to Emerald, became an important figure in administering security measures and communicating with Emerald and the others. Through his journey of redemption, Raúl demonstrated a completely new level of dedication. he became an active member of Don Alfonso's plans, helping to establish security protocols and ensuring that all Emerald's needs were met. His dedication began to gradually restore the trust that his previous actions had destroyed. Lucia, the nurse with a hidden past, has become an important ally. She acknowledged that she was a secret agent hired to monitor the situation and ensure the safety of Emerald and the twins. Her experience in safety and medical training made her essential to the group. Lucia demonstrated her determination by saying, "I am here to help, and I will do everything necessary to ensure the safety of everyone." A detailed plan was drawn up with the help of Don Alfonso, Maria, Raul, and Lucia to save Esmeralda and the twins. In the hospital, additional security measures were implemented, and a surveillance network was established to track any suspicious activity. The team was in constant communication and ready to respond quickly to any threat. Now stronger and more conscious, Esmeralda began to participate actively in the conversations. Everyone heard her voice and respected her. "We need to ensure that our children are safe, and that means working together," she said with a firm voice. "We're all here for a greater purpose, regardless of the past." A sense of unity and purpose was created by an unlikely alliance. To safeguard the greater good, everyone knew that individual differences should be ignored. Each member of the team had a clear and defined role, and meetings were frequent. Teamwork and confidence began to develop, creating a solid foundation for overcoming obstacles. New information about the genetic mutation of the twins continuously emerged as the team worked tirelessly. Geneticists, together with the hospital's doctors, have begun to create ways to use the mutation beneficially without compromising the safety of babies. The conversations were conducted with extreme caution to ensure that no information was disclosed. Lucia added security and knowledge as a secret agent. Her ability to cope with high-pressure situations, as well as her experience in safety, have made her an excellent team leader. Lucia instructed the team on security exercises and quick response, saying, "We need to be prepared for any eventuality." Raul worked tirelessly with Lucia, determined to show his worth. He demonstrated remarkable competence in planning and executing security actions. His dedication was not ignored, and confidence in him began to gradually recover. Raul said with determination, "I am here to do whatever is necessary." Maria, who was always the emotional link of the team, let Esmeralda feel safe and supported. She was always by her friend's side, giving advice and comforting her. "Esmeralda, we're working together on this. We're going to win all this."